Hello everyone and welcome to another Scots Whay Hae podcast, and today I'm joined by writer Alan Parks to talk about the latest Jospeh Gunner thriller, Deception. Hello Alan.
Hello.
Got my copy here.
You do?
And just thinking before we start, the last time you and I spoke was back in 2020, April of 2020, which would have been the early days of COVID.
Yeah. It seems so weird now that, it wasn't even that long ago, but it just seems like such a weird period.
Yeah.
How everyone adjusted to it so quickly, and then it became a sort of new reality, then it just went away again. Suddenly, you don't really think about it.
Well, it would have been one of the first ones we did over Zoom, and that was a brave new world as well.
Yeah, it was, I know. I still don't know how to do Zoom, I must say. But COVID is kind of weird. I was thinking about it the other day. I was like, it was so strange, And I remember going for the first time you could sit outside to number 10, over there. And you sat outside and it was pouring and you got a plastic mug of beer. And I was like, this is fantastic, we're back. And I was sitting there in pouring rain, but it was a funny time.
Yeah, exactly. And I think we kind of cut a lot of it from our minds, but sometimes when I'm out for a walk, I'll say, I remember that was the only shop that sold toilet paper for a while.
And all this weird stuff, like queuing outside, you need to queue outside the supermarket. It was like queuing outside Studio 54 to get in. I need a bit of excitement to the whole thing.
Well, that was all in the past. But so, before we get into Deception, tell us about Jospeh Gunner as a character. Interesting character.
Jospeh, he was a detective, almost a detective, I should say, based in Maryhill Police Station, which is pretty much still there, to be honest. And he goes away to the war early and gets very badly injured and comes back to Glasgow to sort of try and work out if he's still allowed to be a policeman. He can't serve in the army anymore. And he also comes back with an addiction to morphine, which people always think about the Vietnam War, that people came back as junkies, whatever, but it happened to World War II because that was the immediate, battleground medication.
Yeah.
So people came back with a similar thing. Anyway, he comes back, and what had happened in Glasgow at that point was the kind of middle bit had gone off to the war of the police, and they called back retired old policemen, and they also had a thing called the police auxiliary, which was like 17, 18-year-olds, which was kind of did traffic and,
Yeah.
So they really didn't have anyone to investigate, complicated cases. So he comes back and his ex-boss, who's been brought back, meets him at the station and asks him to help him try and solve a mystery as a body's been found in a bombed building, but the body's fingers have been taken off to prevent identification. So obviously he didn't just die in the bomb.
Yeah.
And so he sort of reluctantly agrees.
And why did you want to write this character? Why was this one that you were drawn to?
I'd have thought by this point, I'd have thought of some snappy answers for these questions. People say to me, why did you write about World War II? I'm like, I have no idea. I just did.
Just wake up one morning
I
and
did.
go...
It was kind of weird. Everyone thinks, I must do this because of that. You just kind of...
Well, let's put it into a bit of writing context, because when we last spoke, and people probably still know you best for the Harry McCoy series, I think... I was 6 novels into that, is that about right?
Yep.
Yeah. So you've taken a hiatus from that, it seems.
Well, the 7th one's done.
The 7th one's done, right, okay.
So it's just waiting. But yeah, I did take I don't really know. I've been sort of tinkering about with an idea about World War II in Glasgow for ages, and I kept going and coming back and going and coming back. And I think it was partly because I just read a couple of things that sort of brought it home a bit. When I found out that the Kelvin Hall was used as a temporary morgue, you get a sort of sense of how many people were killed, and also these weird things that they were terrified of the Union Canal being bombed, because if it was, it would push down and probably cause more damage to the city than anything else. So it was these sort of slightly weird little things about World War II in Glasgow, and they sort of came together. And then, I suppose it's just automatic that somehow he became a policeman,
So rather than having an idea for a character, it's the kind of stories behind it. Some little stories come together and you think, I can bring this together.
Sort of mushed it, and then you think of someone, well, what's interesting if someone went to the war and their war was over before it began, and that sort of thing. And, and to be honest, I'm not very good at war. I don't really know much about battles or when things happened or whatever. So he sort of was at the war for 5 minutes, came back and was in Glasgow. So made it a bit easier. I just wondered about these people, that came back and basically started their work again on Monday, you know.
Yeah. That is interesting. I hadn't considered that.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. You know, you're so used now to sort of therapy and PTSD and all this stuff, but a lot of these guys literally just went back to work in the factory on the Monday morning. And, you know, my Uncle John was in the war, and he landed at, you know, Saving Private Ryan.
Sure.
And he told me he was much more scared of jumping in the water than being shot by a German.
Wow.
Because he couldn't swim.
Yeah.
And he was terrified that they would make them jump out, you
Too
know,
far.
before he could stand. So I thought that's quite a strange perspective, you know. So different things sort of set you off a little bit, I think.
Well, that's interesting because that's mainly from the first book. He's back in Glasgow, but when we meet him this time round, he's in New York.
He's in New York.
And it really is New York. So how and why is he there? How when he finds himself in New York?
Weirdly, at the beginning of what was it, SOE, Special Operation, you know, it was kind of a lot of posh boys doing very strange things. I mean, in New York, there was Ian Fleming was there. Hardy Amos, you know, the Queen's Couturier was there. You know, it was a strange selection of people pretty much unmonitored, you know, and were building the Secret Service. And they were really there largely to convert hearts and minds to try and get America into the war. And that happened through fair means and foul.
Yeah.
So his boss is another, you know, posh boy, so the chances are that's where he would have gone, and he brings Gunner with him.
Yeah.
So I just thought it was quite an interesting idea. Again, it's probably like, God's sake, 10 days before Pearl Harbor, where literally everything switched completely. You know, but at that time there was still, you know, there was the America First organisation who were desperate to keep America out of the war. They were slightly fascist organisation, and you know, so there was a lot of rumblings going on just that time. And then, of course, in Pearl Harbor, everything changed completely. So it was quite an interesting time to have a look at, and also, you know, New York at that point was like Hogmanay every night because people came through in troop travel transports.
Yes.
And one night off.
And they went for it.
And they went, so every night was like nutty in New York. So that was quite fun to write about as well. So yeah, it just seemed a logical place for Nickerson to go, really, and get involved with that sort of, as I said, slightly fair or foul attempt to change America's minds.
So, you know, he takes Gunner with him, working for the British Secret Service.
Yeah.
But he doesn't seem to fit with these people that you're talking about. I mean, you mentioned Ian Fleming. Fleming's in the book.
I know, I'm getting real trouble. Not real trouble, but the Ian Fleming Society. I recommended the book before, and I'm like, Jesus, when they read this one, I'm going to be in trouble. But yeah, he doesn't fit in at all. You know, there's still... Why would he? You know, he's a working class Glasgow guy with a bunch of boys who went to Eton, and, you know, so he doesn't really fit in at all, which is kind of to his advantage as well as he's not, you know, and some of them are more friendly than others. Ian Fleming's a bit snotty about him. But yeah, no, so I think the fact he's, you know, he gets sort of sidelined into organising the muscle basically to break up rallies and stuff, because he's a bit more suited to that than having dinner with, you know, the Vanderbilts and trying to persuade them to get America into the war. Yeah,
absolutely. But do you consider these spy novels? Do you consider Jospeh Gunner a spy? Because he doesn't, you know, if he is, he's not particularly secretive.
I don't know what spies do.
But I think your other characters are what we would think. What they would think of as spies. You know, kind of. There's lots of allusions to what will happen later on in private, in public schools. And,
I mean, I think they are spies, but you know, I don't think, to be honest, I don't think I've ever read a spy novel in my puff. You know, I always just think it's leaving things on benches in Hyde Park, but I don't really know. But no, he's not really much of a spy. He's there to do different things, I think.
He's a kind of wrecking ball at times.
Yeah, he sometimes does the dirty work that they won't do, you know, and he's a bit more used to doing that, having been a policeman, you know. Not that policemen do any dirty work, of course.
Of course not. Well, the NYPD this time round, I've got a few...
I know, it's a bit of a nutty.
Did you do any research into intelligence?
I was there a lot, actually, in New York. The library with the big lines in front, New York Public Library, is amazing, and they have, a bit similar to the Mitchell, they have these enormous linen maps of, you know, in the 40s, and so tell you exactly what each little, you know, shop or everything, and you know, I find it hard to write unless I know where people are.
Oh, that's interesting.
So I need to put them somewhere so that I know when they're there, they walk to there, or how they get there. So I had to kind of work out where he stayed. The office was in Rockefeller Centre, which made it easier. The guy that's slightly Nickerson's role slightly based on did stay at the St Regis in a big corner suite. So once you get kind of geographically where you are, and you know, I went to see a place called the Brooklyn Boatyard, which is enormous, you know, and during the war, there's something like 90,000 people working there. There's own tram stop and everything. And they've done it up now, and it's kind of multi-purpose, and the guy there was great. He was like, why are you on this tour? And I said, I'm trying to take the 40. He went, just email me. Poor man, I kept emailing him every 5 minutes. So I did that and went to see the old police station, which is now kind of designer flat. So it was just to get topographically fixed as to where things were. But the weird thing was, in the book, there's a lot of it happens outside a place called the River Club,
right,
which still exists. And I was staying in the River Club,
okay, which
is kind of weird. It's a whole series of bizarre reasons I'm staying in the River Club. You had to wear a suit at all times.
Okay,
so that was quite interesting. Anyway, and I'm sitting in the River Club in the sort of lounge bit, and I'm reading about Charles Lindbergh, who started America First, the baby, kidnapped baby, and it was like Charles Lindbergh held the first meeting of America First in the lounge at the River. I was like, oh my God, that's a bit strange. So, you know,
so that was total coincidence.
Total coincidence. So yeah, so it's what I'd like to, I like to see where the places are that I write about. I find it really helpful.
That makes sense because most of your novels are set in Glasgow, so you know the geography well.
Yeah, but then and I do it with Glasgow as well, and it works. There was one of the God, don't ask me which one. One of the books, someone got murdered in a close in Shettleston.
Yeah.
And I thought, I'll go and look at the close. There's going to be a close, what am I going to find out? I don't know, but I'll go and look. But weirdly, across the road, was a huge big pub. I can't remember the name of it now. But I found out that it was one of the few pubs in Glasgow in the 70s that allowed travelling people in.
Oh, right, okay.
So there was one in Glasgow Green, the Bowlers, I think it's called.
Right.
And they really were the only places that they could go that were allowed in. And that sort of made a big turn in the novel because, obviously travelling, McCoy grew up in Care.
Yeah.
Travelling people, kids were literally taken off their parents, for no reason whatsoever and put in care. So I thought, well, maybe he knows someone that'd be in there. So it kind of made the novel change a bit. So I think sometimes the actual physical going to places really does.
Really helps.
Yeah.
So you can kind of walk the streets. I totally agree with you. There's nothing I like better than... I can remember early on reading a James Kelman novel set in Partick and thinking, I could follow where he went. And it does give you something.
I think it makes a lot of difference. The one after this one's set in the south of France. So I've been there this summer. It was great hardship, as you can imagine.
Are you just setting them in
must be some Barbados or something. Terrible thing.
Ian Fleming invites him to his house in Barbados.
Exactly. But yeah, I do find it really difficult to write it if I can't see where the people are. When they're doing things, which is a bit weird, but.
So we've mentioned that Ian Fleming's in the book. There's quite a few other real people who you've populated in there. Charlie Parker. Yeah, you've got a Kennedy.
I've got a Kennedy.
Yeah. Ouija the photographer, which was great. Yeah. And I love it because you don't just go, this is this person. You've got to do a little bit of work yourself to work out who they are.
I went to his old flat, which was kind of weird.
Oh, wow.
And it was opposite where they used to get things developed for newspapers.
Right.
So, there would be these huge queues of copy boys with film waiting to get developed to go back to the newsagents and stuff, newspapers. So, yeah, because I started looking at his pictures as a kind of reference, and then you thought, well, maybe we'll put him in and see how we got on. So that was great. John Kennedy, Joe Kennedy Jr. Is that right? Joe Kennedy Jr.? Yeah, he was in a bit. Charlie. Yeah, I just think it's quite good fun to put these people.
Absolutely.
And I try and not go, here's Charlie Parker.
Yeah, no, exactly.
So you have to kind of think a little bit.
You have to think, well, I did anyway, kind of thinking about times and where he would be playing and all that. It's the same with Joe Kennedy.
It's kind of true. He did play in that dance hall at that time, so it's quite good fun doing it. And I'm always slightly paranoid that the publishers go, you can't put that in, which has only happened very rarely, so...
But for those people who don't know, you should check out Ouija's photographs off that time, because a lot of them were criminal photographs.
Oh yeah. I mean, he started off as a crime reporter.
Yeah.
And he had a really powerful car radio, so he could listen to the police signal. And he started developing pictures in the back of his van, so he was always first to everywhere and first to deliver the pictures. And then around about the time we see him, he started to he started to be treated as more of an artist.
Yeah.
Which was quite interesting. But once he thought he was an artist, he started making these really terrible photographs of sort of faces that were all sort of wobbly. It was just horrible. He stuck to, but his photos are amazing.
Yeah. That kind of reportage photography.
Good. And these giant big flash guns. So everything's really detailed. It
really captured in a moment.
Yeah, no, it's great. So he was good fun to put in.
And in terms of, were there other people that you kind of wanted to bring in, or was it just they came say, well, if Gunner visits this club, then there's every chance Charlie Parker's going to be playing that night? Was it that kind of thing?
It was. I mean, at one point I thought Charles Lindbergh, but then I thought that's a whole load of baggage that I'm not really interested in. It's suddenly you have to talk about his kidnapping. It just all becomes too much. So I kind of left him out. I don't think there was anyone else I wanted to squish in there. I can't really think. I think I probably managed to get everyone in that I could.
You mentioned America First, and I want to know, because I don't know the history of this time in America at all. So how big was that? Because it kind of echoes a lot of what's going on now.
America First at one point was huge. They had a huge rally in Madison Square Gardens, which is on YouTube.
Yeah.
And it's like a kind of fascist rally, it really was. And then Charles Lindbergh became so nuttily anti-Semitic that he kind of was too anti-Semitic for America First. And he had to resign, and then it all started to fall apart. And then obviously when Pearl Harbor. Yeah. But they used to have, it's a town in New York State, upstate, they had like Nazi summer camps for kids and stuff.
So that bit's real, that kind of real, area, that was a real
that village
kind of...
And the bit, it was called Germantown.
Yeah.
It's now called Yorktown, which is kind of up from the United Nations in New York, was similarly, swastikas everywhere, this kind of stuff. A lot of German people there. And we went back to have a look, and there's still 2 or 3 things there that were there. There's a bakery that looks exactly the same.
Yeah.
It looks like a bakery in Munich in sort of 1930. There was quite a big part of, this sort of revisionist idea is, nobody wanted to lose their kids in the war, But a lot of it was, we quite liked the fascists, so, it was a bit difficult. I mean, that was Joe Kennedy's sort of get out. I didn't want to lose my son in the war, that's why I supported it.
Yeah.
So,
there's a lot of kind of retrospective justification for these things.
And especially when, obviously after Pearl Harbor, there was no taste for it anymore, so... But
before Pearl Harbor, they're looking at different ways to kind of get America on the side, and some of it is foul means.
Well, they were kind of the first dirty tricks, really, which is kind of interesting. They did things like, they would plant things in newspapers like American housewives in the Midwest are knitting socks for British soldiers, which is completely untrue. And then they get it placed in something like the Straits Times or the Melbourne Age, and then the wire services would bring it back to America and publish it as if it was gospel, so there was a lot of that sort of stuff. At the higher end, there was a sort of thing called the Club, which was 7 or 8 incredibly wealthy, incredibly influential New Yorkers, very rich, Vanderbilts, all these.
Yeah, sure.
And they were, they were helping to try and get America into the war for various reasons. And they did a lot of different things. It was, as you would see now, the sort of dirty tricks that they did in, I don't know, Chile or whatever. It's the same kind of thing, It's a
kind of playbook it's become about how to do these things.
You start up magazines, you donate money to, all these sort of things. You donate money to certain organisations and get it done. So that was kind of the beginning of that, which was kind of interesting. Yeah.
What I like about Gunner's character when all this is going on, he kind of plays, for me, the role of us, because he kind of sees this as all madness and all crazy, and that to some people it's a game.
Yeah, he's a bit like, what's going on? These people are sitting with newspapers and socks and stuff. But I mean, on the other end of it, there was a address to the government, which Nicholson does some of, and trying to get them to join, but Gunner kind of ends up recruiting people to bash people in the America First queue, and set off the fire alarms and all that stuff. So it's a kind of beginning of that slightly dirty tricks thing.
And I was wondering if you had any novels or films that kind of inspired you for that time in New York, because a lot of that time has been portrayed on, like kind of tough guys and dolls and jazz and skyscrapers.
I watched On the Town, which is probably not very helpful. Musical with Gene Kelly. But actually, I can see it would, because it is a kind of musical version of The Town at that time. There's a few ones. I don't really. What did I watch? I watched, which is completely the wrong period, so that's not really very helpful. But the Dead End Kids, those little kids that live by the docks.
All right, yeah,
it's 1920s. And books wise, I don't know. I think most of it was more just actual hard research.
Yeah,
you know what I mean,
okay.
like non-fiction books and things like that to try and work it out. But it's such a filmed period. You can kind of get it in your head.
Kind of Humphrey Bogart, that kind of.
But then it's weird because you're right. If I write about the 70s, I can remember the 70s.
Yeah.
But the 40s I can't, and I'm like, and the police car siren, and I'm like, hang on, could they have sirens in the 40s?
Uh-huh.
Then you have to go and check everything. So it just physically takes a little bit longer to write than the McCoy ones, because you have to check much more, and it's the lists of mistakes I made, I cannot even tell you.
Really?
Yeah. Oh God, there's a very nice man who copy edited the first one. And he sent me an email saying, "Dear Alan, I thoroughly enjoyed the book. Very exciting. There's a few things we should discuss." And there was a list of the things I got wrong. And so I sent him the second one. I'd managed to get the date of Pearl Harbor wrong, which was quite good. And all these weird things, and time. Because when you're dealing with real events, you have to try and bend the story around them rather than otherwise, So it sometimes gets a bit convoluted trying to get the right date and the right... it's a weird one. I forgot what I'm talking about now. What am I blabbering on about? Research, yes.
Research, yeah. And getting things right and maybe not getting,
I know, some of it, I always say, the best thing to do is to do your research and throw away 95%.
Yeah, totally. I've been talking to other writers about that, in terms of the editing process.
When you read a book where someone's determined to get their research in it, no matter what, I don't really need to read 2 pages about the judicial system in New South Wales in 1926, But it's obviously spent a long time doing it, and I'm determined to put it in. So I kind of do it, then try and forget about it, really. Because you're really writing a book about people, and it's not like... I don't have to describe... Do you know what I mean? You describe the time as they interact with it, not just, I'm going to write about 1941 or 42. So, I don't know, really. It's a weird one.
Was it enjoyable, though, writing about New York at that time?
Yeah, it was good. I went there, as I said, and, I thought, I'll have a look about it. There must be pubs, that were opening there. And there's not that many. It's 3 or 4.
Really?
PJ thingies. PJ Clark's, and there's a one in the Old Town Barn. But, so there's not that many. You forget how quickly cities
very much so
go, and it's weird. But it's a funny I went on the tour of Grand Central Station, which, as you can imagine, was indescribably boring. And then at the end, they were you go into the Oyster Bar. I don't know if it was, but it's kind of underground,
right?
And they have these weird tiles, which are called something that I now can't remember. And I thought, well, I better get the right name for them, and I looked it up and I found out these tiles essentially are bomb-proof.
Oh, okay.
They interact so completely like a shell.
It can take a shock.
Yeah, so basically the idea was that the bomb went off in there, but it went out the way because of this strange... if you look at it, it's like a vaulted ceiling with these weird tiles. I forgot what they're called. So you get, for 2 hours of utter boredom, you get 1 minute of, that's quite good. Yeah. The same thing happened when went to Peterhead, because in one of the books, Stevie Cooper's in Peterhead, and I'm sure Peterhead sits above Aberdeen.
Yes.
It's really fucking cold.
Yeah.
Really windy
very
and rainy and horrible, and it looks disgusting. And I've sort of, before I went, I'm already sort of Stevie Cooper in himself freezing to death, moaning about it. So again, you go through this whole tour, which is really boring. And then at the end, I said to the lady, "God, they must have been freezing in here." And she went, oh no. I was like, what do you mean? She said it was boiling. I said, what? She said there was a big heating pipe
Right.
that went through every single cell, huge hot water pipe. And she said that was hot enough. And she said then there was 4 people in a cell for 2, so they were actually boiling all the time. And it's those little things that you don't don't imagine are always the kind of the good things about research. There's a little nugget to put in that's not what you expect.
And the kind of twist not just your expectations, but readers as well.
It's quite, because you wouldn't think, oh God, it must be boiling in Peterhead.
Peterhead prison.
They'd be freezing. So
people fighting to get in.
Exactly. It's quite good when it knocks your expectations a bit.
And so this is the second Jospeh Gunner novel. And do you have an idea? You've already mentioned France. Have you got an idea of where he's going?
It's done.
It's done, yeah.
And now I think, how did I end up in France? I have no bloody idea.
Well, people can read that for themselves.
I tell you what, there was quite an interesting period. The Riviera, as it was, was run by the Italians, even though it was occupied by the Germans. And they were slightly less fanatical as the Germans. It all changed after Operation Torch, where the Germans all moved in.
Yeah.
But at that point, that's where they got British agents in to France. And the weird thing is, they went from London across to top of Spain, down Portugal, across to Morocco, through North Africa to Algeria. Mm-hmm. They got a submarine from Algeria to just outside Marseille, and that's where they dropped them off. And I was like, how bizarre is that?
Yeah.
That's just not how you'd expect people got in and out.
What a journey, yeah.
So I thought, well, we'll have a wee look at that. It's quite interesting. And that idea, there was people, Henry Matisse was there, Coco Chanel was there. There was a lot of wealthy, sort of arty French and Europeans who fled there and left Paris. So it was a kind of weird... And also there was a huge influx of rich Jewish people who were trying to get on board ships to South America. And you would have these people sitting in the sand with not quite a Renoir, but, going, does anyone want to buy this?
Yeah.
So there was these weird sort of things going on in that area. So I thought it'd be quite good if he went there and... we had a look at that.
Oh, that sounds fascinating.
Yeah, and I tried to go to Algeria, but it's pretty difficult.
Right. Okay.
I didn't know this, but Algeria is the second biggest country in Africa, which is news to me. So Algeria, the bit at the top, where it's a bit like Australia. Everyone lives there.
Yes. And then you have this huge
20,000 miles of desert, and then there's a fight, a civil sort of war with South Sudan. So the government says don't travel. And once they do that, it gets really hard to get insurance and all that stuff. And
so even though you could go to the bit...
The bit's absolutely fine. Yeah. There's nothing happening there. But also you have to send away your passport for 2 weeks to Algeria and all that. It's just really complicated. So that was a bit of a shame because I kind of wanted to go. But I went to south of France, to Marseille, which was really good. And Nice, which was really good, as you can imagine. But there's a big... It used to be a brick factory, a brick and tile factory between Marseille and Aix-en-Provence that became a sort of holding camp before they put people on trains. Okay. So there was stuff around there. So there was interesting stuff going on. And, they went there to take, British people went there with money, basically, to give to the resistance and to give to all that. So there was quite a few things going on. But just this idea of the submarine just seemed so bizarre. Yeah, absolutely. And bizarrely, I read the autobiography of the man that not drove the submarine, that's not right, piloted the submarine, captained the submarine. Yeah, I think, I now know much more about submarines than I do.
You did before. Yeah. How far ahead... or can you plan with these novels? Do you have ideas that you think, well, I've got the next one done, I'm thinking about the next one, I'm actually thinking about perhaps the next one?
Well, sometimes it's easy and sometimes it's not. Sometimes it falls into place, but at the end of this third book, they end up back in Algiers, and 3 months later, there was a conference in, I was going to say Constantinople, that's not right, Casablanca. Mm-hmm. With Roosevelt, Churchill and Stalin was meant to come. So it was this huge security operation because we were the 3 leaders of the Western world, or the world, in the one place at the one time, which was kind of hard to defend. So that was, I thought, well, if they're there, they'll probably have to go there and try and deal with that. So sometimes things come out of the blue, or sometimes things, the McCoy one that's done that's not out, sort of takes place in Lennoxtown Castle.
Right.
which, you know, is a very sad story. It was a mental, you know, residential institution, and a lot of the people there, a lot of women particularly, have been put in at age 16, 17 for having a baby at wedlock or smoking in the street or something, and basically forgotten about, you know. So people live 40 years of their lives in these places, so
just locked up
and forgotten about, you know. And they had a report done, I think, in the late 70s, and they basically just closed it down because it was so awful.
I was going to say, McCoy series is set in the 70s.
Yeah.
So this is him discovering that after a period of...
Yeah, well, this is him discovering it before it was made public, if you know what I mean. And, you know, there's the people that were in there have associations, and they, you know, talk about it, and you can go and see them. So sometimes things just kind of stick in your mind a bit, you know, and you think, well, that's happening 5 miles from fucking Argyle Street, you know, and people are locked up for 40 years for smoking a cigarette in the street, you know. So sometimes you walk ahead, and sometimes you think, God, I better think of something, you know.
So, I mean, in terms of Harry McCoy, this one's... Do you have a date for that coming out?
I don't know.
No
it's
idea.
Publisher stuff. It's called The July Graves.
Right.
Another cheery title.
Should say for folk that don't know, we've had January, February, March, April, May and June.
Yeah.
So...
And also there's one... Liam McIlvany and I wrote one together.
Oh, yeah, I remember he mentioned that. Yeah.
So that's kind of weird. God knows when that'll come out. So yeah, you get a kind of logjam with publishers. They don't go very fast.
Was that because you saw each other writing in the Mitchell?
No, it's because in his books...
Oh, that's... sorry, tell the story.
And in my books, the detectives actually live around the corner from each other.
That's right.
In Partick, so you kind of think, well, they probably know each other. You know, and I put his detective in one of my books and vice versa. Then we thought, well, why don't we write one where they work in the same case, you know? So he started it off. There was no big no story, no overreaching. No. He wrote the first 5 chapters, sent it to me. I wrote the next 5 and sent it back, and went like that. So it was quite weird.
But writing your own characters.
It does overlap slightly, which is kind of weird. But mostly it's your own person. But yeah, I think that's called Dead Soldiers. Another cheery one, which is cigarette butts, apparently.
Okay, fantastic.
I know. So
that'll be it. That's I do remember Liam mentioning that, so that's great that's been written. So you got a lot ready to.
I know.
To go.
Some out. But publish it. It's a bit like the record industry 20 years ago. It moves at a sort of glacial pace. You know?
Yeah.
Everything takes a year.
Yeah. I mean, that's about a year, isn't it, between a hardback and a paperback?
Pretty much, yeah. 8 months, something like that. So, yeah, it just goes very slow. So
something interesting about reading Deception, because this is something I've said to many folk over the years, is when I've been reviewing a book, you can enjoy this on your own, even if you hadn't read the previous ones. And with this case, it was right, because I hadn't read the previous one.
Right.
So, which I will do, because I think the character's amazing. But is that something that you agree with, or do you think, if you're into a series, you really should?
Yeah, no, I think you should be able to, and sometimes it's quite hard, because you've got to balance telling people who haven't read the first book without giving away what happens, if you know what I mean. So you have to kind of balance it a little bit. But I mean, there's not much point in saying, I've written The July Gaze, but you can't read it, so you read 7 books before it.
No, I know, definitely.
Yeah, you know, it's a bit nuts. So hopefully they all sort of stand alone, and hopefully if you've read them all, you get a bit more connections maybe, or something. But yeah, you can't just go, you can't read that unless you've read that one. And
what about, you were saying that the ideas that eventually became the Gunner novels, the first 2 anyway, were things that you'd maybe read or things you'd brought in. Are there other things that you think, that could maybe go in a different direction or have another character or another series?
Well, somewhat bizarrely, my publisher said to me, she was reading about some guy, and I'm terrible, I can never remember the name. Anyway, he was a guy born in Glasgow in 1860 or something. Mm-hmm. And he went to the Yukon during the gold rush.
Right.
And published these terrible long poems like the Ballad of Sheriff of, all these sort of, which were in these little magazines, and he'd become incredibly rich. Uh-huh. Came back, went to Paris, and then went back to London and went in World War One. His actual story wasn't very interesting, but the idea of someone moving that much, at that time. So I started thinking about that. So At the moment, somewhat implausibly, I'm writing about the Yukon in 1893, about which, as you can imagine, I know absolutely nothing. So, yeah, I've sort of gone over there for a bit. I'm not quite sure why, but...
Oh, wow. And will this be a different character?
Yeah,
Oh,
it's completely...
clearly,
It's not even a detective book. I'm like, well, what happens if it's not a detective book?
Yeah.
Can we kill someone? You know, but I don't know what will happen with it, but weirdly, because we've got this kind of logjam, I'm not sort of thinking I'll better write a McCoy one or a better write a Thingy one. I've got a bit of time, so we've ended up in the Yukon and Glasgow in 1883, where there was a big ship disaster.
Right.
Where they invited all these people, the great and the good, to come onto this ship while they launched it into the Clyde. But as it went down like this, the chains on this side broke, and it slid down like that, went in sideways and tipped over.
Oh, wow.
And an awful lot of people drowned, so it sort of starts there. So it's quite interesting writing about Glasgow then. You know, it's the road that goes up to Blythswood Square was the big rich people, that's where everyone lived, because the West End wasn't really the West End.
Yes.
So you learn all these slightly odd things about, you know, so that's...
I think someone told me now about the history of that area and how there was a lot of big townhouses.
Yeah, it's the road that was up Blythswood Hill.
Sheridan, actually, yeah.
Yeah, that was where rich people lived. They were just building the university, they'd half built the tower. Central Station was known as the new station, which is quite good. And you know, the West End was still pretty rural. You know, it wasn't very built. You know.
Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting looking at all that stuff.
And you got to go to the Yukon and.
Well, I looked at it, and it's the most impossible place to get to in the world. It's worse than Australia. It's like the very, very top left of Canada.
Right.
And you have to go to Seattle, then you have to get a boat, and it's just a nightmare. So I thought, is it going to look like what it looked like then? Probably not. No. Dawson City doesn't really exist anymore.
Isn't that amazing? That was the place that they were determined to go to and
settle. It's so difficult to get to, I cannot tell you. It's like going to New Zealand, you know, it's as far as you can get the other way. But these people all did it, you know, across America and came from Europe and everywhere, you know, in the hope of and you know, Dawson City went from nothing to the boom town of all time in 5 to 10 years, and 5 years later it was gone.
Was that the gold rush?
It was a gold rush, yeah. It was gone, been and gone in 10 years, you know. And they built all these huge houses for people, and they just all fell apart because nobody lived in them anymore and stuff. So, so it's kind of interesting, but quite what I'm writing about, I'm not entirely sure. But
I wonder, because I know that you worked in the music industry previously.
I did.
Would you ever say anything against that backdrop?
No, I mean...
Not interested.
I think John Niven's kind of done it, to be honest. That's obviously not London Records at all.
No.
No, I don't have that much interest in it.
Right,
you know?
okay.
To be honest, I just think writing about it... There's little bits in Bobby March.
Yes, and
at one point I thought I might just write his life story, which is kind of Zelig, you know, he's always in these places where things happen. So I thought about that, but writing about actual music, I mean, it's just like an office. People sit in an office. You know,
Yeah.
But I realised a while ago I sent in the wrong copy of Bobby March because I was looking at it the other day and I was like, where's the bit with the Rolling Stones? And I've sent in the wrong version. There was,
and only you would know that.
I know, exactly. There was a bit where he went to Olympic Studios to do the audition, and I was, why is that not in it? And I think I must have sent the wrong version in, but there you go. So.
Oh well, you can maybe put a kind of director's cut.
A director's cut with he goes there and he meets what's his name, Ian Stewart.
But it is interesting how we talked about this a little bit before we started recording. How people do seem to be interested in the kind of ins and outs of music industry, and also at the moment, music biographies are a huge thing.
Yeah, no, people, I don't really know. It's a weird one. You know, they've done this podcast about London Records and stuff, and I'm sort of like, why would anyone listen to that if you didn't work there? And even if you worked there. Yeah. You know, so I don't really get it myself. You know, and a lot of it is just mythologizing. You used to get it with Elektra Records, and you're like, well, hang on, you know, they didn't make these bands up, but there was 10 other record companies trying to sign them as well. Yeah. It wasn't like they were the only reason the Doors exist.
It's mythologizing, as you said. This is the only way this could have happened. Right?
Hang on, no, you know, and just...
It's like the guy who turned down the Beatles as if he'd never done anything else.
No, it just drives me a bit nuts, you know, and it's... People, I don't know, I just find it a bit... I don't know, maybe it's me. getting too crotchety in my old age.
Maybe you know it too well.
Well, maybe I know that it's not largely true, but you know. But I think people like to read about artists and stuff, you doing stuff, and I think some of them are worth. I'm saying this. Nevin said, every fucking musician wrote their autobiography during COVID,
Yeah, so maybe that's why they're all coming out.
Yeah, which is fine if you're Mick Jagger, but not so much fine if you're the bass player in, some indie landfill band, So I think if the band is interesting, absolutely, But I think there's an awful lot of I'm in a band, so I'm going to write a book, Yeah.
It is true. I'm just thinking over the years, at times when people find out I used to work in the restaurant business and things like that, they went, "Well, you ever thought of writing a book?" Set there, and you went, "Well, 7:00, bringing in a bag of onions, and I burnt the soup, get a new pot on." It's not.
It's not quite as I mean, it's
but these things become glamorous almost.
They do, and I think Niven did it well. I mean, he really sort of satirised it and took the knees off of it, So I don't think I'd be good at doing something like that, really.
Particularly Kill Your Friend. First,
So.
But when I was reading that book first time, I was going to Leeds for some reason. I was going to something in Leeds. And just as the train was pulling at the station, I finished the book, put it down, and someone, whoever it was, leaned over and said, "Did you enjoy that?" And I really, really did enjoy it. She went, "I used to work with him. I don't know who it was, I'm going to tell you." But I said, "Is it true?" She went, "Well, embellished." And I'm like, it's a novel. It's a novel.
And the thing is, at that point, there was money floating about.
Yeah.
Now, there's nobody works in my company.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Well, I think that's why it's such an interesting novel, is because it's a time of
stupid money.
Crazy money.
Yeah, I mean, nutty money. London kind of ran on Northern House records. Mm-hmm. And you would sign these Northern House records, one-offs, DJ Numpty or whatever, for like $100,000. But you would make it back in compilations, like now that they're called music and all this stuff. And that just doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
It's weird. And record companies only really look at bands now once they've got past a certain point, and their socials are at a certain level and all this kind of stuff, But at that time, there was people running about with checkbooks chasing.
Yeah.
I mean, Fluffy. I remember Fluffy. God, which was a kind of Britpop.
Yeah, I remember that name. The names of people from that period when, as you say, everyone was seemingly getting signed.
I think one of them was in Ormsby Gore, as far as I remember. But people were just going nuts.
You used to say, if you had a pint in the Good Mixer, was it in Camden, that you'd probably get signed?
You would. It was just, it was nuts. So I don't think that happens so much now. It's really not quite so exciting to do that. I mean, at that point, every week there was a new, It's funny, some of it ages well and some of it doesn't. I was listening to my headphones on the way here, and that Stutter Alaska record, and it's still a fucking great record, and some of them aren't.
No, absolutely.
But that, I hadn't heard it for ages. I was like, geez, that's a really good record.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, sometimes.
And so we mentioned as well that last time we spoke, back in 2020, I was wondering about your life as a writer since then, because this was your third novel in, I think, when we spoke. Is there any, have expectations been met? Have there been surprises? How you found it?
Well, I never had any expectations, to be honest. I sort of wrote the first book and that was that. I didn't really think about it. And now you just kind of get in a thing, what has been quite good fun is the fact it's been published in other countries.
Yeah.
So you go there and, it's like doing press with a record label. So the band goes to Belgium and does 2-3 days press. I'm now the band. I used to be the ones going, you're getting your photo taken, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And that's quite good fun, it's in different countries, France, very political, everything they ask you is about Marxism, which is kind of weird. Spain, it's always about philosophy, you get these weird differences, so it's good fun doing all that.
I can't remember who it was. There's a writer just recently talking about doing that overseas tour and saying, in certain places, I think in Scandinavia, again, it might be quite, well, how does this feel about the existence of man or something like that?
I know.
Just written a crime novel.
I know, France obsessed with Marxism. I think it's a sort of leftover from the 70s, And so they ask you, did you write this book to reflect the collapse of late period capitalism? I'm like, no. It seems a bit rude to go no. So, well, maybe. So, but that's
an interesting question. Yeah.
They ask you lots of weird things, and in Germany it's the weirdest. You go and, often you do these things, book things. You read out a bit of the book, and people ask you questions. In Germany, there's people whose job it is to read out the book.
Oh, okay.
So you sit there, and this guy reads out the book. And you read and the acts and all this stuff, and it goes on for about half an hour.
Wow.
And I'm sitting there, I'm going, why am I here? This guy's
I
doing
had that experience once. There's a writer who I won't name, but he was too kind of nervous to read his own stuff, didn't want to. So he got an actor friend of his to do the piece.
And the guy that did mine was Tom Cruise in Germany. He dubs Tom Cruise's voice. And I was more excited to see him than me. Do you know what I mean? I'm sitting in this sort of rural Germany going, what the fuck am I doing sitting here? You know what, this guy's giving it loudly. So different places, different...
Do you enjoy that kind of side of things, the kind of publicising and kind of promoting?
I enjoy getting out of the house. So if you spend 90% of your time at the kitchen table, it's quite... Yeah, I do. I mean, without trying to sound... It's nice when people say nice things about your books and say they've been affected by them or enjoyed them or whatever. You know, so you can't really get too... annoyed about that. So yeah, it's good to get out of the house, you know, it really is. And we've got Bloody Scotland Book Festival coming up next month. Is that something you've enjoyed, the festival side of things? Yeah, they're interesting. It's nice to meet people who like your books. They tend to be quite long. Right. If you go for the full time. Yeah, they tend to be quite long. But they're fun, you meet different people and you get to know people and stuff. But yeah, it's you know, and the people that go are nuts. They go from things at 9 a.m. to 6 at night. It's a big, keen readership. Yeah, it's really nuts. And I had never been to a book reading or festival till I wrote a book, you know? Yeah. And I was sort of amazed. I'm like, you know, it's a bit weird. But yeah, they can be really good, yeah. So I'm going to Butte for Butte Noir. Because that's the other thing over these period of time since COVID is explosion of festivals. Yeah, because it all closed down. So yeah, Butte, we used to go on holidays all the time when I was a wee boy. Which was amazing, you know. When Rossi at that time was absolutely brilliant. So it's not quite as... It's still got the kind of memory of it, faded grandeur, if you like. That'd be fun. Yeah, I like the fact that these kind of little festivals have and the weird one, in France, often they're sponsored by the government. Yes. So they put them in the middle of nowhere to stimulate local activity, you know. So you end up in the strangest places. You're like, God. And I did one in Sardinia. And then the Communist Party took us out for a lunch, which to this big long table in the garden, and said to you, "Oh, your book's all about Marxism and late period capitalism." I was happy to say yes. I've heard that about lunch, you. Yeah, so that was good. And are you a big reader as well? Yes, yeah. I'm a huge. And weirdly, I'm sort of now coming out of having to read books about World War II. Yeah, of course. Because I don't know anything about it. I didn't do history at school. I thought World War II started and everyone went to France the next day. I was like, you told me. Anyway, but so I've started reading fiction again, which is really good, because I got kind of stuck with World War II. So yeah, I read a lot of them actually. Weirdly, I'm reading the book that the guy that I'm doing the panel with in Butte, C.J. Howell, his name is written a book called The Salt Cutter. Okay. And I sort of perfunctorily thought I better read it, you know, and it's actually amazing. It's really good, and it's just good to read fiction again. I just haven't done it for a while, you know. So yeah, I read anyone that particularly sticks out to you? Enjoy? Oh, let me think. God, no, I won't be able to. I read Flesh. Read that book. David Zasky. I can never pronounce his name. No. Oh, I've seen the cover. Yeah, that is an amazing book. Okay. That was incredible. That really knocked me for six. It's so well written and so it's a very masculine book in a weird kind of way. But that was brilliant. So yeah, that was a really good one. I enjoyed it. And this one I'm reading just now is good, and you know, I've got some sitting on the shelf, but you don't, you know, I suddenly found I'm still ordering books about, you know, Cambridge spies and stuff. Yeah. It must be. I mean, it must be interesting once you start getting into that thing. You just want to know a little bit more. Because you know, I know nothing about it whatsoever. And find that little nugget that you can include. And it's always the peripheral stuff that's kind of more interesting rather than the, you know, battle of whatever. So yeah, those it's called something Apostles. So I'm going to read it that arrived yesterday. So see how we got on. Well, Alan, thanks very much for coming along to talk to me. I really enjoyed Deception. I'm looking forward to what Gunner gets up to next. And Harry McCoy as well. You're very welcome. Thank you for having me. And we'll be back soon with someone completely different.